couple weeks ago, something came up on the live stream doing some thick to thin, and somebody asked about doing some 1/4 inch aluminum, some 090. So that's what we've got set up. We've got some 1/4 and 090 doing a fillet weld. We also have some 1/4 and 090 doing a lap weld. So I'm going to show you guys how far to bias your tungsten over and some little tips and tricks I use on running thick to thin. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love doing thick to thin stuff. So nothing super fancy here on settings. I'm running 191 amps. We're still a little bit low for welding like 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch, but I'm setting my amperage more towards the thicker material. Obviously we're about 100 amps over what we need for welding 090. So 190 amps is where I like. Running 201 hertz. Running the higher frequency, really drive that arc into the joint and have a little bit tighter control of it. So we got two really critical things to watch here. Number one is our torch angle. The other thing is watching our amperage. So this 191 amps, we're gonna need most of that to melt into this base, but if we roll that 191 amps up to this 090, we're gonna blow the backside of it out. So we have to really watch our puddle, read our puddle, see what it's doing, but we have to really concentrate on aiming this arc down at our base material and letting the top toe of the puddle catch this 090 plate. Little snafu up here at the beginning. I ran out of talent, but got it sorted out. You can see we have a real nice smooth bead. Our toe line's melted in real nice on our 1/4 inch, so we know we're getting good penetration to our base material. We don't have really hard, peaks and ridges here. So we've got a real nice smooth flat toe. Of course, we've got a real nice smooth flat toe up here, but our leg size is pretty equal. And the reason that is, even though we're focusing most of our heat down to this bottom plate, as we add filler, it's really drawing it up to this 090. So we're really catching the 090 with the top edge of that toe and letting it fill in that way. So even though our arc is based down here, the overall heat input, we're making a real fine balance, keeping it equal between the plates as far as the bead goes. So here we have the backside. So you can see we don't even really have any heat distortion on this backside. So it's nice that, if you didn't know I welded the other side, you wouldn't know there was a weld behind this this plate. So really nice and smooth. So I didn't run this last 1/2 inch of weld for a reason. I want to show you guys on this backside, and I didn't want to have a backing to it in like a heat seek. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay this over, and I'm going to basically come at this like a regular fillet weld, like same, equal size material. And you're going to see we're going to get a lot of distortion on the backside of this, probably blow this out pretty quickly. All right, so on that last pass, we were running pretty much wide open at 191 amps, and I had my tungsten really biased towards this 1/4 inch plate. So now I'm going to act like we were running an equal size thickness and just run this right down the center, wide open again, and we'll see quite a bit of difference on this backside. I was running a really neutral torch angle, just right down the center, not biasing to one side or the other. And you can see I've got a lot longer leg length on this top plate. And that's because it was heat soaking faster, so everything's wanting to run to it. Whereas when I was biasing down, we had a really nice even leg size. So now we've got all of our leg up on this 090 material, which is our weakest side. We've got barely any leg of our weld down here on the 1/4 inch. You can also see on the back side here, we've got a lot of heat distortion on the 090, and even as we got into this other weld, you can see it was creeping up above it, and we got a lot of heat distortion on that back side too. If we would have been another 10 amps higher, it probably would have blown all the way through. So now that we ran the fillets, let's run this 1/4 inch to 090 lap weld. Lap welds come up quite a bit. So I'm gonna run this first half using proper technique, having my tungsten biased quite a bit towards this 1/4 inch plate. In the second half, I'm gonna use some pour technique, kind of running it like you would an equal thickness lap weld, where you're running it kind of right down the center, or even biasing that top plate to get it to roll in real nice and smooth when it's the same size. Now that we have this material thickness difference, you're going to see quite a big difference between the bias side and kind of the pour technique side. So again, you can see I actually arc up way over on my 1/4 inch, and I walk in slowly to my 090. And I'm still probably biased, you know, a 16th, almost an 1/8 inch to that 1/4 inch plate. But notice that the edge of my 090 isn't really sucking away. So it's a very nice, controllable weld. So as we were running this weld on the arc shot, I had my tungsten position about right here, which is almost to the toe of where my weld is on this 1/4 inch plate. So I got a real nice smooth toe line on both sides. But this 090 plate was not really sucking back. You know, it was really nice and easy to control because I was biased so far over this 1/4 inch, and I was just letting the toe and the addition of my filler rod catch this 090 plate. So now that we were biased about an 1/8 inch over, I'm gonna move over to the 090 and run it right down this edge. And we're gonna see on the arc shot cam, this edge is really gonna try to suck away from me, so it's gonna be hard to control. As we get some more heat into it, you're seeing it heat soak, and that edge is starting to rip away from me just a little bit. That actually ran better than I thought it was going to. See, we'll run this other side. There we go. There we go. It's starting to suck away from me real bad. There we go. All right, so on the second run, well, on the first run, I was running 190 amps pretty much wide open that whole way. So I've got a really nice, tight, uniform bead. And here I started out wide open, and I actually started having to move away from my 090 plate, still running 190 amps. And I started backing off, but it was so heat soaked that my bead actually started running further and further and further into my 090. And I was really having to dump a lot of filler rod in it. So we started out real nice. And as we got along, you can see we got way too hot. We had a whole lot bigger bead there. It still didn't suck away from me as bad as I was really thinking it would. So we went ahead and ran this second side. And on the arc shot, you can see we were really having this 090 eat away from us. So we were having to jam a ton of rod in. And as we got out here to our termination, you can see that it really tried to eat away. I had to jam a whole bunch of filler rod in there just to get it to look halfway decent. All right, so we went over some proper technique on running thick to thin, couple different runs, different joints, fillets, lap welds. So if you have a thick to thin situation come up, I had it a lot, like on an intercooler, I had like an 090 plenum, and I was welding a 3/16 or a 1/4 inch thick bracket to the side of the plenum. So this thick to thin came in a lot for me. So just something as you're working on projects, if you have a thick to thin, here's a couple tips. Hopefully it'll turn out better for you. I'm Jesse McCollum with Everlast Welders. Remember, weld mean, weld green.